Sounds good. All right. Lorraine, if you can, just like we've done before, I think you put up the agenda and we'll go from there. Thanks, Lorraine. Okay, very good. So let's begin. Welcome everyone to another ETAC meeting. It's the Englewood Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. Today's date is Thursday, January 14th, 2021. The time is, I believe, 6:03 p.m. And so we'll get started here. I did approve the agenda, and basically we'll start with that and go to the order and roll call. And Lorraine, if you could please guide us through that.
Chair Sarno,
Present.
Vice Chair Lewis, Member Dietrich, Member Knudsen,
Here.
Member O'Connell,
Present.
Alternate Member Plasters, Mayor Pro Tem Sierra, Director DeAndrea,
Present.
Sergeant McKay,
Present.
Traffic Operations Supervisor Croft,
Present.
and we have Senior Planner Vobaril.
Here.
Okay, very good. It looks like we do have a quorum and enough people here to continue the meeting. So let's move with that. And the first or the following agenda item would be the approval of minutes. This is from our December 10th, 2020 meeting. If everyone has had an opportunity to review those minutes and has any comments, please provide those comments at this time. Any corrections or revisions and the like. Okay, there's Patrick. Looks like
Hi.
you've come online. Hey, Patrick, right on. Good to see you. Good to have you.
You too. I just got here.
That's fine. We're just going through the previous minutes there, Patrick. So
Okay.
if you've got anything to add, just let us know on that. But do we have any, we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure. I'll motion to approve the minutes as included in the packet.
Thanks, Greg. And do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Thanks, Patrick. Very good. And any further discussion on approval of minutes? I hear none at this time, and so we'll go to a vote. Lorraine?
Chair Sarno,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lewis,
Aye.
Member Dietrich, Member Knudsen,
Aye.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't hear Member O'Connell.
I didn't hear my name, but
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead there. You got it. So we're approved with that. Motion carries. Let's move on to the next item. And this is public forum, recognition of public comment. So if there's anyone from the community that would like to speak to the group, this is their part to go ahead and let us know their thoughts. Right now, I don't see anyone and I haven't been notified. Lorraine, have you gotten anything from anyone?
I have not received anything, Chair Sarno.
Very good. Thanks, Lorraine. We will continue then to the next item on the agenda, which is old business. And we don't have anything there for that item. So we're going to move on to new business, and we've got a few things there. The starting off is the Englewood City Center Development bicycle pedestrian routes. This was brought about by member Canadison, brought to our attention from that. And I think this kind of dovetails into what John is here for today at today's meeting as well too. Unless, I think you've got a few other takes on there, Greg, but I'll let you speak to that. It's your item that you brought to our attention. So go ahead and guide us through that.
Okay, sure. And would it be okay if I share my screen? The images that I shared got a little bit messed up, I guess,
Yeah.
in the process of turning them into the packet. Okay. So you should see, this is a Google Maps screenshot. And I did my best to draw in what I know of. So there's a sort of green hand-drawn line that's showing some current bike routes along the South Platte over on the far left. And then the top is the Dartmouth that then connects into the tunnel that goes underneath Santa Fe at Cushing Park. And then there's also the little Dry Creek Trail that goes from, I think about it as going from Clarkson to the O'Reilly Auto Parts, I think it is, parking lot, or the Pier 1 parking lot, where it kind of dead ends there, right by Hamden and Broadway, where there's that little pond and stream. And then there's on the left-hand side in blue. So the green lines are meant to be things that exist now. And the blue lines are things that I've heard as being on the, sort of in cities' plans. So on the left-hand side is the rail trail. And then the other blue line that goes right through the word medical and Swedish Medical Center is I guess that's Grant Street Bicycle Boulevard. And it just seemed like if we're talking about a significant change to downtown Englewood and to the layout of the streets there, then this could be an opportunity to provide better separated trails for bikes and pedestrians, or at least to think about how that might look. Because, we've got the light rail station there, a lot of public services, a lot of, commercial options, a lot of different businesses with storefronts there. And yet there's not, if you could go, you can go on the sidewalk, of course, to feel really safe. For people, I'm thinking primarily about people who are a cautious bicyclist, not somebody who's comfortable riding in the street necessarily, but somebody who wants something like a bike lane or a totally separate trail, like a little Dry Creek Trail. What can we do to provide folks like that with a way to get to all of the new developments that are going to be going on there, or to the light rail station? And so the other thing that I tried to pull together was a Strava heat map. So I don't know if folks have seen this before, but basically, Strava is a tool primarily focused on athletes. So this data skews a little bit more towards people who are using it for tracking athletic activities, but it does also just track commutes to some extent. And I think that I had filtered it down to bike rides only. And then the intensity of the light, sort of how big the lines are and their color, how white they are, is an indicator of more heavily used routes. So you can see that Clarkson is pretty popular. Dartmouth is pretty popular. The South Platte Trail is pretty popular. And some folks use, I think it's Girard, right here, going through all the parking lots and by the apartments into downtown, or into the civic, the Englewood Civic Center area. But it's not super popular for bikes. I think this is Floyd here. Are you seeing my mouse, by the way?
Yeah, we can see
Yeah.
it, Greg.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So Floyd is somewhat popular, although that doesn't really connect as well to the central area of Englewood here. So I don't know. I don't feel like there's a real like slam dunk. Here's what we should obviously do coming out of this, other than maybe like this seems like a pretty strong casual route going diagonally across this parking lot. That's obviously like some private land, but if we could maybe get that to be a bit of a commitment from that developer there, maybe we could get them to paint in a line or something that goes across there.
And that trail that you're on right now, Greg, that's the little Dry Creek Trail, correct? That
I think
meanders from Clarkson to.
Yeah, I think that the Dry Creek Trail ends like here-ish.
Right.
And then from here up to the roundabout is just going diagonally across the parking lot.
Yeah. I know, I think we've touched upon that previously, that disconnects there, and it's kind of a thorn, I guess, for cyclists or anybody that feels like, hey, where do I go from here? That's completely understandable. Yeah. And
my perspective is like heavily influenced from the cycling side of things, but I do think for this one in particular, like the Dartmouth line that I drew, that's a fine way to ride a bike in that painted bike line there. But I think that for the little Dry Creek side, that's also a pretty good way for pedestrians to go, because the alternative as a pedestrian is like to be walking along 285 or something, which is, really inhospitable. So this is a great way for folks who, there's a handful of apartments here and more going in, for those folks to be able to walk on a separate trail. Seems really nice.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, we've talked about this a few times. I'd be interested to see how the Logan and Sherman and Clarkson areas might be affected if there was a better connection through where that parking lot is as well. But yeah, some major thoroughfares here that are pretty obvious, and it's kind of interesting. Floyd, we've been talking for a while. Obviously, he's been planning on doing some improvements there. It's clearly something people are using now, so that I would expect to see that increase. And yeah, this is a nice map. Thanks for pulling this up, Craig.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it really speaks to, of course, the activity that's out there. And as you mentioned, Greg, you filtered to cyclists, right? Bicyclists, but typically we know that, that's also a path or a common path where pedestrians travel as well too. So, yeah, and people are going to gravitate towards these roads where it's going to get them to where they need to go, and whether it's recreational or just a means of getting around. So this really highlights that, I think, very well. I think this is great information that we can apply to, looking into the future and how we want to apply this to, I guess, what John is going to talk to us about perhaps a little bit. And I think, Chris, you had brought this up at the last meeting regarding the city center development and how we can, ETAC can be a part of that, at least up front, to understand how we can provide input to the city without getting it too far out of reach. So I'm putting words in your mouth there, Chris, and you can go ahead and add to that, but I think that's part of what requesting John to participate in today's meeting was about.
Yeah, it certainly was. And, I wasn't quite sure it was going to come up on the agenda here. So I don't know if this is the best time to talk about that potential rezoning and development changes and uses. Was that your intent, Greg, is to kind of supplement or bring that up a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so, the topic was really seeing that there was some potential zoning variance changes and things for some developments coming in along Hampton there in that city center area, and some redevelopment. And it was kind of, it looked like there were a few different pieces to that change where they were looking at that development, but also a sort of more general zoning change in the area. I think the main piece of it that we were looking at was the main floor retail, but also just, the significant increase in number of people in that area, pedestrians in general. And so we were hoping, John, that you could, be here and speak with us a little bit about what's going on there, because, as a committee, if there are those types of changes, it might change the way that, we discuss things or make recommendations. And, we want to kind of be ahead of that and make sure that we're moving in the right direction if that's the way that the city is going, or also, you know, provide input if we're early enough in the process to, you know, at least be able to, you know, help out a little bit and provide citizen input on that as well. So, you know, I don't know if you want to just kind of talk about some of those changes that are coming up here that are in the news. That'd be great. And by the way, I didn't get a sign in, Chris Diedrich speaking, and thanks for having me tonight. And thanks, John, for coming too. I appreciate that.
So I put together a short PowerPoint for this. And so that'd be great if I could begin to share my screen, and I'll take you through that. All right, so community development has been working on redevelopment efforts here at City Center for the last, I maybe say a year and a half. Is probably how much time has elapsed. The way the thing is set up is that, so on this map here, the blue parcels are areas that are controlled by the city for the most part, except for maybe the parking lot to the north. However, that's kind of been thrown in there as well. And then the reddish areas are the areas that were held by bondholders, the buildings. The land is actually owned by the city, but the buildings are owned by some bondholders. And basically the development defaulted about 2 years ago. And so the bondholders are not collecting as much money as quickly as they thought they would. And that's going to be permanent unless something changes. So we're kind of, what the city has done is we've put out an RFP for the blue areas, and we developed we chose a master developer out of Portland called SKB. And then we're also kind of working with the servicer of the bondholders called LNR Partners. And we've kind of, we've kind of come up with an agreement of going forward of how both the city and LNR Partners and SKB can benefit if we work together. So this agreement basically requires a number of different swaps. SKB, so LNR Partners would give to SKB the Bally, I guess it's the 24-hour fitness. It used to be called Bally Fitness. The Tokyo Joe's retail pad, the Piazza retail, and the north half of the Office Depot Harbor Freight Block. And in return for that, the city would allow LNR to convert their lease on the south half of the Office Depot Harbor Freight Block to a fee simple interest for resale as a residential development opportunity. And so this is kind of, this is the recommended redevelopment approach that we've been working on to date. And you can see that it does not, it stays west of Galapagos Street. We're not dealing with the Walmart or the Ross or Petco. And you can see that, so SKB's development would be heavily in this portion where they would probably raise the Civic Center as we know it. They would create a festival street right here, and they would also look to see if they could relocate the city's offices somewhere in this location as well. LNR Partners would get to take this parcel and develop a 350 plus or minus apartment building there so that they could make a sale to another developer and then recoup their losses in a much quicker fashion. And this is still being kind of debated by SKB as to what this will look like in this area. And there probably be some kind of public parking facility as well. In terms of bicycle planning, we have not really done anything beyond this at this point in this process. However, I think I'm glad that you guys brought this up because I think that we probably need to start planning for it now while we're planning for this as well. Let me just so I'm going to go forward to this one. This is kind of what our plans tell us today and what we have today. So the red lines are existing bicycle routes, South Elady Street and South Sherman Street. The green is the Little Dry Creek Trail. And just for your information, the way that's supposed to work, but I do acknowledge it's not signed well or it's not intuitive, is that you are supposed to cut over and go over to Hampton on the sidewalk, then over to Cherokee, and then north up to the light at Hampton Place, and then you make the crossing there. And then it's a little bit more intuitive. There's a very wide path that goes up to the circle and then over to Laddie and then up to Floyd and takes that kind of little back behind the wall route to get over to Inca Street. That's how the route is supposed to work, but as I do acknowledge, it is not intuitive or signed. And then our plans, of course, we have over here in the purple is the future rail trail. And our plans also in the walk and wheel master plan call for Englewood Parkway to become another major route as well, and Floyd Avenue as well. And we've been actually we have a 5% concept plan for this West Floyd Avenue. And I'll show you some pictures of that in a minute. I guess I'll start showing them now. So this is the Floyd Avenue Bikeway. And I'll just kind of go through. This section starts here kind of over by the park and ride for the food blocks to Fox Street. And this is kind of what the concept looks like. There would be a bike lane going to the east on the south side of the street. And then the westbound would still use this shared lane behind the wall. And then farther east, we get to Elady Street, and you get this kind of big boulevard kind of thing going on here. And this envisions a road diet, taking away one of those lanes and putting in this really large buffer for the bicyclists. And that kind of looks like that.
One question on that last side,
Sure.
John. On the northwest corner of Cherokee and Floyd, I see that there's like a little triangle inserted there for like as a pedestrian island, I think. And then what is who owns that property on the corner there? What's the purpose of that? Do you know?
I believe the city owns that, and it's really just some kind of a leftover piece that has been concreted. And
yeah, Director DeAndrea.
Yeah, it's actually owned by EAF, so the Englewood Environmental Foundation. But John's right, it's kind of a leftover piece. It must have been from when that road was put in or something. But technically, it's EAF.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then as you move closer to Broadway, of course, it becomes a little more urban and narrow. And so the design looks a little bit, the buffer becomes a little smaller. Then I have to mention this as well. So your previous traffic engineer went out and was able to get some different sources of grant monies because he had a lot of knowledge about CDOT grant programs. And so one of the projects he applied for was this Elady Street Floyd Avenue intersection project to redo the intersection with a kind of a roundabout in the middle there and some mid-block or refuge crossings, pedestrian refuge crossings as well. $1.440 million, but it's unfortunately not scheduled, I found out, till 2023. And so I don't know how that will complicate the Floyd Avenue project or not, but we'll have to talk about that some more. And then for Englewood Parkway, the plans for Englewood Parkway call in the master walk and wheel plan called for protected bikeway, protected cycle track. And that's kind of what that looks like. This is a cycle track that would have be protected by a parking lane. And we would imagine it to be on both sides of the street. However, we've not done any design work at all on this. So that's something that I'm wondering if maybe we should start maybe thinking about doing that this year. And here's my final picture of what that might look like. And that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I would be glad to take them now, or if you have comments on any of this, what you've seen, that'd be great too.
John, can we go back to slide, I think 6? Or 5, maybe? Yeah. Would it be feasible when we were discussing the Dry Creek Trail, kind of where it juts up at the end of where it is now, to put a ramp where there's stairs and just loop back to the Hampton Avenue to avoid having to go through the parking lots and do all that changeover that way? Or
yeah, that did occur to me that if you made a really nice facility on Englewood Parkway that then dipped down here on Acoma and then over to Hampton, maybe that makes a lot more sense, is just connect people into that.
I don't know, just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this is a good opportunity for us to address everything in that area, being that we're ahead of this in terms of the city center development, redevelopment here. So, I think the timing is just right. And this could take a few ETAC meetings to, discuss and sort through, or, I don't know if anybody wants to evolve into a subcommittee on this or what have you, but, even the group as a whole, we can all contribute to this, and just by looking at this and a few different ways to approach it and so on. So that is the good news here, is that we're ahead of the curve on this, and we want to continue to work with. And I guess it would be you, John, or, is that just something that we would, having Maria as a liaison and whoever else, or is that something you would need to come back to occasionally for this? As a committee develops what we're thinking as certain possibilities for some of these pedestrian and bicycle routes.
Yeah, we would. So obviously what we would do with this is we would put this out as some kind of a job for a consultant, a bicycle engineering consultant. This is complicated probably enough and important enough to probably have some kind of process where the consultant would probably develop a number of different concepts or alternatives in various different portions of the corridor. And that would be great if ETAC would review that for us, give us some input on each of those.
Great. I'm appreciating that you mentioned that. So I know I overheard you saying that, you're not in design yet, but you're looking to, I guess, retain a consultant to develop some of these pathways or different scenarios, correct? So, and I think that's a great approach. We will have our own input, but certainly for them to develop what they think might be some great alternatives, and for us to be able to comment on that, I think that's a big plus. Does anybody else in the committee agree with that? Kind of milestones, if you will, of having the city obtain a consultant, develop some alternatives, and then having the committee together review those alternatives, and then going from there.
Yeah, I think that sounds great, Neil.
Okay. I mean, we can certainly go out there and dare to dream ourselves, but as you mentioned, John, it's nice to have a consultant on board to kind of look at this, and I'm sure they're going to be gleaning off of some information just the same way that Greg did from what's existing and the travel paths that are out there, and try to provide some good alternatives for that.
Yeah, the consultant can really make it, show it on paper what it would look like. And then you can really, you get a much better sense of what it could be and the possibilities and what the constraints are as well. And it's just a lot better with the consultant on board.
Yeah. And maybe real life examples from other cities that are kind of comparable.
Yes, that typically these bicycle consultants are well versed in what's going on in the state and even in the country.
Very good.
Yeah,
John.
I'd be really interested to see what they have to say about the traffic circles. I know that those reduce T-bone accidents for motorists, but I think they're a bit of a nightmare for people on bikes and on foot. So I'm hesitant about those changes.
Understood.
Okay.
Well,
I
I appreciate seeing all of these. I feel like it's great I didn't realize, this network that's on the screen right now, I didn't realize all of these items that were either here or that are planned. And yeah, just like the idea of having Englewood Parkway with protected bike lanes, that's like a dream. I feel so excited about that. Yeah, just it feels really exciting to me. I know it's like years in the future before the full dreams are all realized, but it's nice to see what's out there.
Yeah, that is a downside. It takes a long time to get from A to B.
So, Chris, Member Diedrich, did you have anything else for John related to your questions on the zoning and so on from our previous meeting?
I think this answered a lot of my questions. This was very helpful, John. So thank you for putting this together. And I just appreciate us being engaged in the process here. And I appreciate you guys putting in some work here to do some pre-planning and being open to some different options too. And of course, John, to you and Neil's point, it is going to take a long time, and we're probably going to have changes along the way too. We'll see. So I just appreciate you having us in the process, and I'd like to, regarding the zoning stuff, the single level retail exemption for that entire area, other than just kind of that main Broadway strip. So where exactly is that at? Is that going to happen then, or is that just proposed right now?
So I'm currently working with our Planning and Zoning Commission, and we have determined that our best course of moving forward with zoning is that, so originally City Center was a planned unit development, and it requires all the property owners to sign off on it. And we determined that a better approach for us in the city's interest was to go a different route and rezone it back to what it originally was, which is MUB1, which is the same as the downtown area to the east. And one of the things we are in that process, we are looking to remove a thorn in the city side where they had put a provision that 50% of every parcel in this MUB1 had to be brown for commercial. And that works pretty well on the old parts of Broadway, but a lot of the other streets like Acoma or Bannock or Sherman or Lincoln, or even some of these really large parcels to the west, that's a lot of commercial to require. And right now, the future of that is very uncertain. And so we're looking to try to reduce that down to just the historical Broadway parcels.
Okay. Yeah, I don't intend to get deep into a zoning discussion here because that's not necessarily our forum, although it does affect the way that, we recommend things or think about, the way that pedestrians and just people in general are using various areas. But thank you for that explanation and that update. I appreciate that. I didn't have a whole lot more for questions on my end right now. If somebody wanted to speak, to that previous point, though, go ahead. Thanks.
I would just add that in general, I think the direction of where a city center is headed is something that's going to be more open to, of course, pedestrian friendly, bicycling friendly, and just having that more of a city center that's accommodating for everybody in that context. So we know that all of these, everything that we're looking at, I feel in terms of the cycling routes and all of that, it just speaks to this committee, and it speaks to us, collaborating with the city to make sure that we're going to be on top of it in terms of the volume that's going to be coming our way. I mean, it's just going to increase over the years. And I don't think anybody would deny that, but so I think it's good for us to look at this and really move forward with different alternatives. That's going to make it a really fun place for everybody to migrate to.
I had a question for John. I know you were saying that the plans that you were working on did not include the parking lots for Walmart and the Hobby Lobby. And I was wondering if there are plans for changes for that in the future, because those are just such huge parking lots. They're really not conducive to pedestrian and bicycle anything.
Well, yeah, you're right about that. And so I'm thinking that's why we need to start studying it now, because we probably will need to be approaching Walmart for other things. And it would be great to come up with some ideas for this quasi parking lot street, so we could make it look a little bit, or look and feel a little bit more street-like than it is today. The Hobby Lobby is probably less of a challenge, but yes, it we need to start working on the entire whole thing all the way to Broadway, and probably actually even beyond that, probably should be planning for Hampton as well, past the medical district and the hospitals as well.
Yeah, there was a great article on Colorado Public Radio just a few weeks back talking about how there's so many unused parking spaces near transit and how that drives the price of housing up. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that, and there is a corresponding report to that, which I also downloaded, but I haven't gotten to look at yet.
Great.
Right, very good. Any more comments or questions for John? Okay, I hear none at this time. Thank you very much, John. I have just one last thing is I guess we'll communicate through Director DeAndrea or what have you in terms of, the next steps, and whenever you feel that it's a good time for us to reconnect with you and the planning on this item right here, that would be great.
Yes, we will definitely do that.
All right, very good. Thanks, John. I really appreciate this. This is really informative.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And I'll stop sharing.
All right. Very good. Lorraine, if we could throw the agenda back up on the screen there when you have the opportunity. Okay, next item under new business, Broadway snow removal. This agenda item was brought to us by Member O'Connell, And I believe it's obviously about some snow removal on Broadway. I'll let you take it away, Tiffany, for some specifics on that, and we'll jump in.
I just happen to notice that, every day I ride the Dartmouth bike lane. And while I'm waiting at the light on Broadway, I always notice that the 7-Eleven on the corner of Dartmouth and Broadway, they never shovel, ever. And there's a bus stop there. And I actually witnessed a citizen in a power chair trying to navigate that sidewalk. And it was just impossible for him. And our last snowstorm, I actually had to walk over to Any and All Bikes to get a bike tube. And I was just surprised at how many businesses hadn't shoveled. And it was a good 2 or 3 days after the last storm. And I just thought that maybe, that obviously impacts people's ability to walk around and to, for our handicapped citizens to be able to navigate the streets. And that seems like it would be maybe low-hanging fruit for the city to have some enforcement.
Sure, I can respond to that, Chair Sarno, if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead, Director Andrea.
Yeah, so we actually had some recent communication with City Council about this. So that would go to our code enforcement. So it is the responsibility per the municipal code for the adjacent property to shovel their sidewalks. I believe it's within 24 hours after the snow stops. I can verify that if it's 24 or 48 hours. And they've done code enforcement has done a combination of both proactively trying to give people warnings and tickets to shovel their sidewalks. They also respond to requests from the public where, such as in this case, they simply haven't shoveled. And so if we get a call or a Q alert request through our citizen request online application, then they'll go out and respond to that as well. So I will pass this on to them, and just know that you can do that in the future if you see something like that. And then I'll circle back with some of the information that code enforcement really recently provided to City Council on their snow removal efforts in terms of tickets and warnings.
Okay, great. I appreciate that, Maria.
Mm-hmm.
So Member O'Connell, was that specifically for sidewalks? Was there any other areas that you thought as well too? Was it just primarily for sidewalks there?
It's mostly the sidewalks, and it's just particularly noticeable on our city's main street on Broadway when you just really can't. It was pretty bad. Most of it was not shoveled. And like I said, I just see that every time it snows around the corner of that 7-Eleven. And with that bus stop there, it seems really important to have that cleared.
Looked it up in Munich code, and it's 24 hours.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I'd be kind of curious. I know, Maria, you're not the code enforcement person. You're just passing this along. But to Member O'Connell's point, if I was to provide any additional feedback, I would like. I don't know what their prioritization of enforcement or reviewing the areas is like, but a focus on some of the areas like the bus stops, I think would be, some of the main commercial areas, prioritization on that, I think would be good. The things that help people get around, because especially on those snowy days, that's when people need help the most with that stuff. I didn't. And to your question about, were there any other areas? I didn't really look to see on Dartmouth. I don't remember where the snow plows ended up pushing, how far they pushed the snow off on the side. But the bike lanes in some of those areas too would be good to watch when you guys are out there with the plows.
Will do. And I'll certainly pass that on, Member Diedrich, up to the supervisor for code enforcement about the kind of focus on the bus stops and the kind of primary routes within the city.
Right. I did notice as well on Dartmouth that some of our new fantastic bike lanes, and of course it tends to, some of that snow accumulation and ice happens there, and it's typically, of course, what would be on the south side of the street. The north side would get some of that sun or some of that exposure to the sun, and it melts it off. But on the south side of the street, it does not in certain areas, I've noticed as well too. So it just creates a little bit more of a hazard for cyclists on that side. And it has everything to do with the exposure and being able to get to it in time. So, but that's something else I've noticed there too, Director DeAndrea on Dartmouth there. So if they're plowing, I know that their priorities are to just get the roadway and doing that, but I'm also curious if they can extend that to at least get some of the bike lanes as well too.
That is the intent. So I will follow up with our streets crew about that.
Very good. All right, thank you. Any other comments for the Broadway snow removal item? Okay. Moving on, we'll go to Bates and Logan intersection crosswalk. So I put this under new business, although this was brought to my attention and added to the agenda from Mayor Pro Tem Sierra. And this is something that we did touch upon. It's got to be at least a year or two ago, from my recollection. I think this was it was about the same time that Director DeAndrea, you began at the city, and we put together a crosswalk criteria. I think that was a part of it at that time. So I think, that's my memory. It could be flawed, but that's what I recall. And I don't recall the outcome of that, whether we looked into that in detail or not. But I know that we've talked about this previously. And right next to Bates Logan Park there, and Mayor Pro Tem, you're on the line, so I'll let you kind of talk through this as well too. But I believe you're talking about, you've brought that up before, and you want to reestablish some criteria or what's possible there at that corner.
Yeah, well, the reason why I brought it up, and I appreciate it, Chair. So the reason why I brought it up again is I actually had an email from a constituent that brought it up. And if anybody knows the traffic on Logan at rush hour, it makes it very difficult for some citizens to cross over towards the park. So I remember bringing it up, or at least talking to traffic about it. It most likely was before I came onto council. And I remember them telling me at the time that it didn't fit the criteria at that time. I'm still in favor of it, just because I know some of my citizens, or some of the citizens in the area that do walk it. And, it could be the older crowd, or it just could be anybody with kids. They just have issues crossing Logan. So I just wanted to reevaluate this, see if there's any possible way to get that added as whether it's a lighted crosswalk or something else that would make it easier for people to make it across Logan.
Othaniel, I know that right at the Denver Public Library branch, so just further north on Logan, they put in a rapid flashing beacon crossing there. And it's been such an improvement for pedestrians trying to cross Logan there. I mean, it's so much better than it used to be. And I think probably something like that would be helpful. I don't know that cars would stop for just a crosswalk.
No, exactly. And I agree with you. I do feel that it needs to be a rapid fire crosswalk, as you stated, that's over there in Platt Park. Because they would not stop unless it was some sort of light.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my concern as well too, because Logan being as it is, you would have someone, hopefully not, but just be under the mistaken impression that, hey, it's a crosswalk and I don't have to look both ways. And Logan's certainly not the street to have that happen, I would say. So it would most definitely have to be something that's in excess of just your typical crosswalk with the yield sign sitting there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's something that I'll defer to the city on that, and Director DeAndrea, and I get the traffic group at the city, what their thoughts are on this and some of these other applications that could work, if at all possible.
Yeah, and You know, I do kind of vaguely recall this, and this may, as you said, have been the impetus for why we started with the marked crosswalk guidelines, because I don't think we had any really at the beginning. So we can go back, look at this in relation to those guidelines. Since it is adjacent to a park, it's likely that that would be applicable. So, and we can install that. So we'll get back to you at the next meeting with a response on that.
Yeah, just one
Thanks.
thought, if folks haven't taken a look at it, there's two treatments that have changed recently, both on Race Street, one Race in Dartmouth, where there's like, what are they called? I want to say balusters, but that's not it. What's the word for the
Bollards?
It's
bollards? Yeah.
in-street pet sign.
Well, there's the in-street pet sign on Floyd, right in the middle of the crosswalk, and then I think also maybe in-street pet sign, and then also the bollards that create like a narrowing of, or a feeling of a narrowing of Dartmouth right at Race, and both of those treatments I think are really effective, more than just like putting in the crosswalk striping. I've seen lots of cars stopping when pedestrians walk up to the edge there. And sometimes folks have to wait a little bit to have a car stop for them. But usually within, 30 seconds or so, there will be a car that stops. And so it's worth checking out. I don't know. I sort of assume, I feel like we got some ballpark numbers about the expense of different kinds of crosswalk treatments, and that those were significantly cheaper than putting in a flashing sign. But they're also, I think, I find them a little bit more friendly, or like they create a sense of place that I think a flashing signal doesn't really provide.
Okay. Well, I think that the city as a whole, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director DeAndrea, but you'll take a look at several different options, I guess, for that.
We will.
Correct.
Yep.
I think one of the things that I recall about that was also, and I don't know, Mayor Pro Tem, if you have, a certain leaning towards it being Bates, but, Bates Logan Park there, but also at Cornell, I believe there's a possibility of that. But I remember thinking about some of the grades coming down, because it kind of comes down off of Logan and kind of on both sides to the bottom there. And which ones, if it's too steep a grade, that could be certainly a hazard as well too, if you have a vehicle attempting to slow down or stop, and if it's a steeper grade on one end than the other. I don't know if you recall that or not, but that was a concern I think that we had discussed.
Actually, so I think the bigger concern, and I'm not really trained in this area, so it's better that the city kind of weighs in on it. But I think Cornell's actually, since it's only a block away from Dartmouth, that one has a steeper, if for the car traffic that is headed north on Logan, that seems like too quick of a stop from Dartmouth to make a stop at that crosswalk. So I actually thought that Bates was a better, but I'd leave it to staff to kind of recommend what they see as the better option.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't recall which one it was, but I know that was brought up as a consideration. Yeah. Whether it was coming from Dartmouth coming down to Cornell or the other, or to Bates. But yeah, that, grade is something else to be considered at as well too. Yeah. That's coming down there. But again, we'll defer to the city and staff on that, and have them come back and report back to us on that. So, okay. Anything else regarding Bates and Logan intersection crosswalk? Okay, I hear none. And so we'll continue on. Moving on to director's choice. Director DeAndrea.
Yeah, just one thing to report tonight. So you may recall, might have been our October or September meeting where we presented two Safer Main Street grant applications that we had put in. We were successful in getting the one for West Dartmouth Avenue for $1.26 million. We were just informed by CDOT and Dr. Cog about that. So that's a multimodal safety project on West Dartmouth Avenue out on the west side of town. So it's from Zuni Street, if you're familiar kind of with the northwest portion of town, all the way to South Platte River Drive, where we're going to be replacing the bridge there over South Platte. And basically that money is intended to replace the traffic signals at Zuni Street and Tehan Street, as well as upgrade some of the traffic signal equipment, upgrade the signing, pavement marking, lighting, and some minor sidewalk improvements. So we were successful in that, and that project, we design it later this year for construction in 2022. So that was
Nice
good
success.
news. Yeah. And I had mentioned last month that we were going to do a presentation to council on some transportation safety strategies. We did that on Monday night. And I'm going to go ahead and just, if you're okay with it, Chair Sarno, send out a link to that YouTube videos and the times in case anybody's interested in observing that. So we talked about some different strategies in terms of engineering solutions, enforcement and education, and some plans for the upcoming year here that we can work into the city's strategic plan in terms of transportation safety.
Yeah, that would be great. Please send that out, Maria. We would love to see that. Yeah.
All right, and that was it. Thank you,
Yeah.
Chair.
Very good. Thank you. And we'll move on to, we'll see who else here from the city. Chris Groth, do you have any comments? Anything to share with us?
No, nothing.
All right. Keep those traffic signals live, Chris. Good. Okay. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Sierra.
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay. Sergeant McKay.
I do not have anything.
Okay, very good. Lorraine, did you have anything at this time?
I do not, Chair Sarno.
Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, Chairperson's choice. I don't have too much to offer here myself, other than I'll be working with the city and providing a letter, submitting a letter to the city for the removal of member Plasters due to her absence. And basically, you know, I think she's checked out a long time ago, so I haven't heard anything from her for quite some time. So we're going to replace member Plasters with a new committee member. And I'll get that letter out and get it to the appropriate person at the city, and then we can go from there. I guess I have a question then. Once that's completed then, and if member Plasters is removed from the committee, what is a timeline then for getting another member onto the committee? Albeit I believe she's an alternate, but yeah.
So I can answer that question. So we wouldn't be going through the next interview process until May, I want to say. So, and then we would make a decision in June, and I believe that they would actually, their term would start in July.
Okay. All right. Well, we're following all of the appropriate steps in doing this. So I haven't had to do this in terms of being a chair for the committee and removal. But, you know, again, we've reached out many times and haven't heard anything, and she hasn't attended. So that's our next step. So we'll move forward with that. And then when May arrives, and city can conduct their meeting or interviews and then provide us with the next member. And would it be one or two? Because I thought we had two alternates.
I believe there's
Maybe
only
it's
one
just one.
alternate. Yeah, I believe it's only
Okay.
one alternate, but obviously we would see how many open positions there are within the committee itself.
Okay, I'm not trying to stack the deck here. I'm just trying to make sure that, you know, we've got the appropriate number. So, okay, appreciate that, Mayor Pro Tem. So that's all I have. So I'll move on to committee members' choice. So we'll round the horn with that. And we'll start with Member O'Connell.
Item don't think I have anything further tonight.
Okay, thank you. Member Knudsen?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
All right. Member Lewis?
Nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. And Member Diedrich?
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, thanks to the city staff. We always appreciate you guys spending some late evenings with us. Looks like tonight's going to be a little earlier than typical. So anyways, thank you guys. And John for joining us also. I always appreciate when you come by and give us a presentation, very informational. I feel like we ask quite a bit of you. And so if there's anything we can do for you, feel free to come ask us as well. We're happy to help out. I have one other question, and it was regarding the talking trash. I heard there may have been a meeting yesterday potentially, and so I was just wondering if there was any sort of update on that and just sort of generally with what's going on there. I know we've talked about it pretty extensively here, so just curious if there was any update on that, or if anybody participated, sort of an open conversation, I guess, if anybody participated in that too.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that, Chair Sarno. And I was going to give a formal update at our next meeting. I just didn't get time to write up a memo for tonight. We did have another meeting on Monday. So where we've come, so the organized or the Citizens Committee for Organized Collection was established by Council in June. We've had probably 6 or 7 meetings since that time. We did receive 2 proposals in July. And after a lot of analysis, the Citizens Committee recommended back to City Council that those bids be rejected. That was in early December, and Council approved that. And so we've rejected the proposals, and the committee is working on developing a new RFP. So we've debated a lot of the topics. So for instance, large item pickup, how we do that, how that would be structured within the contract, and how that would be delivered for people and citizens. So that's just one of many topics that we've talked about with the organized or with the Citizens Committee. And so the plan is probably within the next month or so is to finalize that, get a final draft back to review for City Council. They would sign off on all of those elements of what that base service was before we issue the RFP again. The meeting on Monday was inadvertently advertised on Nextdoor as being a final decision of some sort, a meeting that where we were having an open house, or we had already made decisions and we were moving forward. And of course, that was not the case. Before we move forward with anything, there will be another round of extensive public outreach, public meetings to communicate that to people before that decision comes back to City Council. So that's where we're at with basically developing a new RFP. There's no proposals on the table at the time. So those both that we received in July have been rejected. So we're kind of at the starting block again, if you will. And the feeling from the committee was really that they thought they could put a better package together that could be not only possibly more cost effective, but also serve households in a better way.
Okay. So it's basically, we'll be having a take 2, if you will, on the RFP. And the goal is to get better bids and better service, I guess. That's
correct.
What it comes down to. Yeah.
So our timeline.
Is that something?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask that question. You mentioned timeline. That was it.
Yeah, so we're hoping to have the draft before City Council probably in late February or early March. And so if they move forward to issue that, it would go out at that time. And it's usually we leave it out for 5 to 6 weeks. So we're looking at getting proposals back again, probably sometime in May.
Okay. Well, we'll keep that moving. We're no stranger to that. So appreciate the update there, Director DeAndrea. So very good. So if there's not anything else, Chris, it's still your floor here, I guess.
Oh, thanks, Neil. No, that's all. And thank you,
Okay.
Director Andrea. Appreciate the update on that.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Welcome to 21, and hopefully we can get some things done this year, right? So that's our goal. But appreciate everyone's time, and catch up with y'all in February.
Have a good night, everyone.
Night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.